Now, to finish up on the concept of the relationship between the monthly rent and the price and how that affects the gross multiplier, let's just assume we had a $500,000 building that generated $5,000 of monthly income. In that instance, let's call that parity, even though I know we're off by a factor of 1,000. That parity would produce a gross multiplier of 8.3, which is extremely good cash flow. If the rent was $4,000 on that $500,000 building, let's call that 3/4. Actually, that's 4/5. But anyway, 3/4 would produce a gross multiplier of 11.1. And if the income was only $2,500 on that $500,000 purchase price, then the gross multiplier would be 16.7. So as we get close to the rent equaling the purchase price, obviously off by a factor of 1,000, then the cash flow gets very good. So let's put that concept into practice on a real property. Here's an example of a property that on paper doesn't look that great, but we actually sold to a client because it's a fabulous property once you look at the real numbers behind what was published. The property is located at 301 Miramar. The actual sales price was $755,000. And you could see here the agent inputted a gross multiplier of 23.15, which is terrible. I mean, you wouldn't even look at a building with that kind of cash flow. But what you know about this location, 301 Miramar, is that it's a very good location in Belmont Heights that probably would generate about at least $1.50 to $1.75 of rents per square foot. And as I come down to the square footage that's listed per the assessor, you can see the building itself is 3,280 square feet, and the rent rolls, well, nothing's listed in the rent rolls. When I called the agent to find out the rents, they were only showing up as $1.25 a square foot, which I knew were way too low. But when you calculate $1.75 a square foot times the actual building square footage, you get about 5,700. And if you were to take the actual rents of the 5,700 divided by the $755,000, of course by a factor of 1,000, you'd get a factor of almost 3/4, which is about 11 times gross. So I can look at the square footage of the 3,200, look at the neighborhood of 301 Miramar, know that the rental value should be about $1.75 a square foot, quickly compare that new upgraded rental figure of 5,700 based upon the $1.75 on the square footage, compare that 5,700 times the 755, and I know I've got a property that's probably decent cash flowing. Now this is, as I look at these numbers, it can be done in about literally 20 seconds. And what's really critical is that maybe out of 10 properties, only one is worthy of further evaluation. So rather than having to drive by 10 properties and do 10 cash flow statements, you can do it only on one property that looks like it has promise. And that's what we're going to move to next, the Excel spreadsheet where we input some of the data. Here's a simple Excel spreadsheet that I use. If you email me, john@lbre.com, I will email you the spreadsheet that we use, or you can download it directly off our website. And there's only really some basic information you have to input. Up here you input the price, the square footage, the balance of what's inputted to be input here is pretty much the same from property to property. Then as we go down to the rent roll section, you can see we input the actual rents and we input the real rents, what we think are the real rents, and what are actually listed here or what the seller currently gets 3 months later after taking over the building. And you can see the huge difference. Down here I have the gross multiplier listed as 15.24 for the actual rents. So the agent on the MLS of 23 was even wrong there with actual rents. I think it's because one of the units was vacant. She wasn't considering the potential rent that that vacant unit could get. But they actually purchased a building in Belmont Heights, a great neighborhood, for only less than 11 times gross. If I go back up to the monthly cash flow statement, you can see here that the building in its original state, if we were using the rents from the listing agent, the building would have returned a negative almost $1,000 a month in cash flow. But once we brought the rents up to market value, the building is generating over a $500 a month positive cash flow, another huge difference. There's quite a few other fields in here which give you a complete financial analysis. If you have any further questions, you can give us a call, John Dumke, at 562-572-2296. And we look forward to talking to you about your investments in Long Beach.